The Seattle Mariners just made an addition to their bullpen that could help them throughout the rest of the season and the playoffs. And it's an old friend. Now, many of you know that there were a lot of guys placed on waivers by the Angels, the Mets, the White Sox, a lot of big name guys like Lucas Giolito, Hunter Renfroe, etc., etc. And while the Mariners did not get one of those guys, they did end up with Dominic Leone. Trust me, you're not the only one who wanted a Ronaldo Lopez or a Matt Moore. I most certainly did too, but there's actually a silver lining to the fact that the Mariners didn't get them that we'll talk about at the end of this video. But first, let's talk about Dominic Leone, a guy who just came over to the Mariners. First and foremost, let's see what the Mariners did with their roster. To make room on the 40-man roster for Dominic Leone, right-handed pitcher Devin Sweet has been designated for assignment in a corresponding move. Obviously, we saw Devin Sweet a little bit earlier this year. I really do hope that he can stay with the organization. Hopefully, he just gets outrighted. But with that being said, Dominic Leone will be added to the 40-man roster, and there won't need to be a move made necessarily to add him to the 26-man, because as of today, the day that you're watching this video, the Mariners and all of baseball, their rosters has expanded to 28. The original move was going to be to add Adam Oller to that 28-man roster once they got to New York. Of course, now it'll likely be Dominic Leone, along with Sam Haggerty, who we heard was in the clubhouse as well. Looking at Leone's numbers in 2023, they're pretty pedestrian. He has a 4.74 ERA in 42 games. He has 43 and 2/3 innings pitched. He has a 92 ERA plus with a FIP of 5.37, which is pretty bad. So you may be wondering yourself, why the heck did the Seattle Mariners add Dominic Leone to this bullpen that's already been pretty solid? Well, we've told you before that when the Mariners add someone to their bullpen, you need to pay attention because they're really good at this. In 2021, with the San Francisco Giants, Leone had a 1.51 ERA in 57 games, 53 and 2/3 innings pitched. He had a 2.75 ERA plus at the time. Throughout his career, he's always struck out about one batter an inning at a 9.4. But if you remember back when he was with the Mariners, he started his career with the Mariners in 2014, that really good Mariners bullpen. Of course, this is almost 10 years ago now, but Dominic Leone was a huge part of that with a 2.17 ERA. He had a 1.68 ERA plus. But like most of the pitchers in the 2015 Mariners pen, his ERA plus went down to 49. He just fell off the face of the earth. And honestly, that's kind of been the story with Dominic Leone throughout his career. He's had a good year followed by a few bad years, but if anybody can turn around his career and make them the guy that we have seen flashes of throughout basically the last 10 years, it's the Seattle Mariners and their pitching lab that we've seen. They turned Trent Thornton in like a week into someone who is pitching in high leverage situations. Justin Topa is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Gabe Spire is one of the best lefties out of the pen in baseball. So on and so forth. The list goes on and on. So if they can turn Dominic Leone into something, they're going to. If we look at Dominic Leone's Baseball Savant page, it's not really that pretty. He's getting hit and hit hard. He's giving up a lot of barrels, but he is still getting a lot of whiffs and a lot of chase. His fastball velocity is in the 56th percentile, so but he does have good fastball spin. But just back in 2021, he was one of the most dominant relievers in all of baseball. You can see his barrel percentage. He was not giving up any barrels while still running a really good whiff and chase rate. His spin has actually gone up in 2023 compared to what it was in 2021. As you can see here, Dominic Leone relies on 3 pitches, his four-seam fastball, his cutter, and his slider, and he uses them all almost the same amount. And looking at those pitches, you can see that his slider is probably his best pitch. It has a whiff percentage of 48.2%. So almost half of the sliders that he has thrown in 2023 have ended with a whiff. He does have a 25, we'll call it 25-50 spin rate on that slider, which isn't the greatest thing in the world, but the Mariners are really good at finding guys and making them throw their best pitch more often, and them finding success because of it. I would not be shocked to see the Mariners just have Dominic Leone ditch his cutter altogether. He's giving up a 3.28 average on that pitch alone. He throws his four-seam fastball on average about 95 miles an hour, and it has a 10-mile-an-hour difference compared to his slider, which is at 85 miles an hour. This is all to say, the Mariners are good at this, and adding Dominic Leone to this roster could be a big boost to that bullpen. But now let's talk about the other guys. Of course, Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez, Harrison Bader, so on and so forth. The big deal is that these guys did not go to any of the contending teams. Let's be honest, we kind of all knew that these guys were not going to make it to the Mariners because the Mariners were picking 25th out of the 30 teams to get one of these guys off of waivers. And while Joe and I assumed that if a team picked someone up off of waivers that it would then reset them towards the bottom of that waiver wire, apparently that's not the case because the Reds and the Cleveland Guardians made out like bandits. The whole state of Ohio picked up everybody on waivers. The Guardians claimed Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Matt Moore from the Angels. And the Reds claimed both Harrison Bader and Hunter Renfroe. Seriously, Ohio, that whole friggin' state just claimed everybody. For the Reds, this definitely does beef up their offense. Unfortunately, right before the Mariners go in there to face them, the Guardians did beef up their rotation as well as their bullpen. The Guardians are in a much better spot to make a run at the Twins now, and the Reds, how we have seen them be so good throughout this entire year, I think the Reds really have a shot at this thing. But because none of these guys made it past the Guardians or the Reds, that means they didn't go to the Texas Rangers, the Houston Astros, or the Toronto Blue Jays, the three teams that we really need to worry about right now. Honestly, the only guys I really would have worried about going to one of these teams would have been the pitchers. I mean, I could have definitely seen the Rangers picking up Giolito or like a Matt Moore and using them out of their pen. I mean, Giolito obviously out of the rotation, but Matt Moore or Lopez out of the pen. The Rangers have had such a bad bullpen. I guarantee they were really hoping that these guys would make it to them. There were guys that did not get claimed, including Mike Clevenger and Carlos Carrasco, etc. But in the end, those guys are just free agents now. They can sign with whoever the heck they please. We'll see if those guys do get some jobs somewhere. I know that Carlos Carrasco was pitching out of the bullpen, so I don't know, maybe the Rangers could go pick him up now if they really want to. The fact of the matter is, the Mariners got better today. More than likely, right? The Mariners more than likely got better when they added Dominic Leone to their roster for the first time in almost 10 years. Whereas teams like the Rangers, the Astros, they didn't do anything. They didn't add anything. So we can look at it as a bright spot. It's probably a moot point, and in the end, is this really going to be that big of a deal? Who knows? But in my opinion, this is a W for the Mariners. And believe it or not, the Seattle Mariners broke baseball this year. And I have that video on the screen now. I want you to check that one out. Appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.